Good morning, everyone. My name is Anindya Sarangi. I'm head of ASQ South Asia. Privileged to have Anshuman today to host our series of webinars, monthly webinars we're kicking off from Anshuman, our ASQ fellow. I'll take a moment to introduce him, but before that, for the benefit of the entire audience here, a warm welcome from ASQ South Asia. ASQ South Asia has been directly in India for the last 10 years, and of course, prior to that, we had a relationship with associations, and of course, Anshuman had been, I would say, an architect to bring ASQ to India. He has been a long-standing member of ASQ, and a lot of the initial ASQ initiative was also under Anshuman's leadership. As you are aware, that ASQ is over 75 years old organization. We have distinguished fellows and quality gurus who have headed ASQ for so many years. We are into the professional certification, membership, training, and those are how ASQ society is built over the period of time. We present in about 160 countries through our members, through our network, through our direct presence. Like in India, ASQ is based out of the headquarters in Delhi. We work with corporate houses. We have programs running across multiple locations, and I'm assuming that everyone is keeping safe and healthy under this difficult circumstances. And without further ado, let me take the opportunity to introduce the other panelists we have. We have Anshuman and Chandra Kumar. We're pleased to associate with Chandra's team, and Chandra would be looking into the post Anshuman session, would be taking the question answers, and would be doing the closing. Along with me, I have Jay, my colleague, who would look at the back end logistics for the entire event, and Anshuman, our speaker. So let me just quickly introduce you. Our speaker, Anshuman, is a process transformation professional with experience across multiple industries, including banking, professional services, information technology, manufacturing, and consulting. He specializes in setting up and scaling world-class operational excellence program. Anshuman is driven by impact and love to lead people to deliver amazing results, usually 10x or more. So we are hoping that Anshuman, the next webinar we have, you have right now have 105, and I think we have about 100 odd confirmation. So by next webinar, we should look at 10x, right? So in the last few years, he has also managed to manage large RPA and digital initiatives. So he is the distinguished ASQ fellow. And Anshuman, without further ado, it's over to you, and this was all yours.
So thank you, Anindya. Thank you for this welcome, and also for organizing, and thanks also as well to Chandra for initiating this important topic. And this is a topic close to my heart. Like many of you, I see very senior quality professionals, including my guru in the audience. So it's an important moment. It's an important topic. I am not saying this is either the start or the initiation, but of this important topic. But I would like to see it ignite some debate in the quality professional society or the group of quality professionals, which I believe is the purpose of my talk today. I don't claim to offer solutions. I don't claim to offer any research. I don't claim, of course, to have the final word on this, too small for that. But definitely there is this opportunity in the last few years to rethink the quality profession, and having played a role across several industries in the quality profession, I thought there is something that I can bring to the table for discussion. So here I am. Thanks once again for joining this webinar, and I will try and take you through my thoughts over the next 40 odd minutes. There are some slides which many of you have already requested access to. When you see the slides, you will probably not want the access because as usual, my slides are very, very sparse. I would love to, of course, share if you do still want. So with that, let's look at an important question first of all. quality is not a new topic. It's one of the oldest topics. Thousands of years of people dedicated to quality as a profession. I would say that there are lots of discussions around the first quality manual being around the burial processes or rituals around in the Egyptian civilization. Then in China and parts of India, several evidences of quality processes, or at least vendor management processes, being adopted by palaces. So this is neither new nor exhaustive, but I hope all of you will agree that in the last 100 odd years, that quality is what we now know as the modern quality, and maybe even in the last 50 odd years is very different from what it was earlier. The subject has improved, the subject has become larger, the subject has become all pervasive and all inclusive. It is in many companies, it's often today known as business excellence, and which of course expands the topic as you may want to understand. But if we ask a hard-hitting question, what are the new topics in quality in the last 25 years? The answer is very, very difficult to arrive at. Right? So there was I would say, a golden era of quality between the Second World War and maybe mid 1980s or even early 1990s, where a lot of things, like starting with the inspection processes of which were output of or outcome of the Second World War, and lots of those standards came in. They did well, and in the 60s and 70s, Dr. Durand, Dr. Deming, and then later on Professor Ishikawa, they brought together all of that into 7 QC tools, and of course other principles like Durand's universal theory for improvement, and many other concepts. So every few years there was a concept, there was a re-energizing of the whole quality body of knowledge. And later on in the 80s, we had in a smaller way something which I feel was very, very important, the ISO series of standards, which kind of democratized the word quality across the world. It took quality to a lot of companies which till then had either no interest or no access to the concepts of quality. So while many of us professionals look down upon the ISO 9000 series, I thought we are actually a product of that, because most of what we do today is coming from the democratization of the quality world that ISO managed. Incidentally, in the same year, and I'm taking you through a slight history lesson because it is important to build that context. In the same year as ISO was launched, there was Baldrige program. So the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award program and the ISO were both released in 1987, and it was in many ways a watershed year for the subject. There hasn't been one since then, and that's the reason why I think this topic is extremely important. Along the way, there have been many concepts like, of course, Kaizen in many of our charts. Six Sigma came in, then came in Lean, then we had benchmarking, and of course, very popular creativity tools. But all of these kind of were around 15-20 years ago. So what happened in the last 20 years? Not much, right? And that's of course the reason for my slight cynicism with this question, that the quality professional, all of us, we failed the quality profession, and it could have been at the center of the table in many organizations. There hasn't been one CEO for many years who has come from the quality profession. More recently, as a good news, the CEO of General Electric, the new GE, has been in the quality profession. In many ways, the chief of Tata Sons was at some point in process consulting. So apart from these 2-3 examples, and there may be a few more, we have not lived up to the promise. But one thing has remained constant, and that thing is the premise of what I am trying to say. Whatever is worth doing better, and then quality has stood for this for many years now, and I believe we need to apply this to quality profession itself. The concept of continuous improvement or continual improvement, as many of us like to mention, is now time that we apply it to our own. Of course, people will argue that it needs some radical thinking, it needs some re-engineering kind of thinking, but all that may break the subject. There is still scope for some continuous improvement, and I believe that if we look around for success principles, we can actually do fairly well. So, what are some of the reasons why I say the quality profession is maybe a little broken or needs fixing? I know I'm being deliberately provocative. Many of you may not like this, but we are at the crossroads as a profession. Hardly any new top quality roles in the industry today. Most quality professions or roles are now reporting 2 levels lower in the large organization compared to 10 years ago, instead of 1 level higher, which we all expected about 10 years ago. Of course, in some smaller organizations, things may have worked out better, but in the larger global organizations, quality is now reporting 2 levels lower than where it was 10 to 15 years ago. Difficult to digest, but please look at it as a fact that is around us. The second more important part is that most organizations today see quality as a compliance topic. So even the very popular ISO concepts, which I agree that are bare minimum for quality and only set the basic standards, but even they are seen today as compliance and not as a measure of excellence or even a path to excellence. Compliance obviously is a topic that it's like a security guard or a watchdog, I call it, where if things go wrong, you are needed. If things don't go wrong, if everything is fine, you are not even noticed. And that's where in some organizations or many organizations we are. I've often and always believed the third point on the slide is that the quality of quality professionals is now extremely suspect. I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of quality professionals in the last 5 years in trying to build global teams, and this is across the globe. A lot of people want to join the quality profession because it is a easy 9 to 5 profession. There are no pressures of sales, there are no pressures of delivery, there are no pressures of any time. And I've had people tell me in the interview that, look, I'm very tired, I have a tough job, I want this to move into a simpler, softer job. And of course they were not selected, but that gives you a window into what people think about the profession and who is to blame. It is the people in the profession who are to be blamed, including me, of course, who if the rest of the world or rest of the people think that this is an easy profession and you just have to show up and things happen. It doesn't happen that way, right? And it is up to us to change that narrative where we can do stuff which is important for the organization. The other area where I feel we've allowed the profession to move away a little bit or from the mainstream is our difficulty with the robotic process automation and the process simplification concept. So digital operations, RPA, this hit everybody, at least in the managed services space, about 5-7 years ago, and I still find a lot of people completely stuck to Six Sigma, not wanting to embrace RPA, where the world around them has completely changed. World has completely changed, and I'm not talking about the last 3 months. For the quality profession, COVID happened 5 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago, because everything started changing and we did not open our eyes. I know a lot of professionals who even today want to establish a Six Sigma program and expect company CEO to have a to inaugurate it. And I've seen that, I've noticed that it is just not on the agenda, friends. It does not matter to the senior leadership if it is Six Sigma, Lean, or whatever, as long as we are delivering what we promised, and we are not delivering what we promised. Frameworks don't matter today. We now know how Baldrige is doing across the world. Frameworks just don't matter. It is uniquely what is the company's problem. Can you customize that framework for me? Can you make it my reality? And can you help me is what is important. So you will notice that not in the last 10 years, no major framework has come out in the quality space. Reason being, it is not required. There is no audience. And but almost every company has a customized framework. So while in the 80s, 90s, there was a very important saying, like in marketing, there is one that marketing is everybody's job, quality became everybody's job. But while we gave up our job to make it everybody's job, we forgot that we still had a job to do, and our profession expected others to do the quality improvement, the quality compliance, but stopped doing it ourselves. There was limited improvement in our own profession by giving up some of the functions of the quality domain, like inspection, control, assurance, improvement projects, the QC circles, and everything. It became everybody else's job, but we just wanted to remain the advisor and the so-called coach, and which doesn't work because people expect us to actually do something and deliver. Particularly when everybody's job is at scrutiny, is scrutinized on a daily basis, we cannot get away by saying that, okay, we made quality everybody's job. The question then asked is, okay, what is then your job? And we don't have an answer. Next on the list is, did Six Sigma eat quality's lunch? I believe yes. Six Sigma brought a lot of rigor, and this is one of the more radical statements I make quite often. Six Sigma brought a lot of rigor to the application of statistical tools and a disciplined project method, but many of us became too academic about it and forgot that at the end of the day there is a problem to be solved, and it has to be solved quickly, and for it to have any impact. I have reviewed projects which have taken more than a year to happen. No management today is interested in a project which is taking anything more than 2-3 months or maybe 100 days. So and nobody really cares whether you applied Six Sigma, you used any other tool, any other concept. Did you solve the problem? And I feel somewhere many of us are still in the 1990s in terms of totally wedded to concepts which have changed. I'm not saying Six Sigma is not required. I'm not saying the tools are not good. All I'm saying is that our fascination of using it the same way as we used it in the 1990s is not useful. The last one on this slide, and then I move to something more, a little bit more what ails us, is that reverence for quality gurus and the quality principles of 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s is all good. But there is a very thin line between extra reverence or extreme reverence and getting stuck in history. If we don't deliver anything useful to the quality fraternity in the next few years or next few months, we are increasingly getting stuck in history. All other professions have moved on. Not all, but most have moved on. We haven't. And our inability to embrace digital is one of the reasons why I say this, and of course there are many other reasons from this. This is only, I'm sure, if you applied your your mind and your experience to this question, you will probably find many more reasons, and you may disagree with some of these reasons. So be it. This is this is an individual's point of view, and all of us are in this call very committed to the cause of quality. That's why you are here. But having said that, you won't be possibly able to deny that we have slipped, right? And that's where I am trying to make this a little provocative, that the world has changed, and there is no better example of how everything changes when the world changes. In the last 3 months have kind of expedited and crunched maybe a decade of change into 3 months of change. We all know how Microsoft Teams today has 3 times the users that it had 3 months ago. 3 times the users. It would have taken them 10 years to get to that number, right? Maybe 5 years. We don't know, right? But suddenly everything has changed, and life is different. Now we might be required to do our own job differently. We don't know, right? And that's of course true for everybody. But the reason why I give this reference to the current crisis is because it shows us the value of things changing dramatically. It is only like a movie playing, a decade of long movie playing out in 3 months for us, and jolting us that life can change. If we are not ready, it will change for the adverse. So here are some of the things that I talk about when I talk about what is quality today, right? And I'm not trying to make this tools and techniques topic at all. This is a principles topic, and you will not find, apart from one, there won't be any tool or technique on this, because the tools and techniques are of course the means to get there, which is the same thing I say about anything like Six Sigma or any other topic, is that it was meant to be a vehicle for continuous improvement, not to be the destination. And many of us made it a destination. So what are some of the things that are important to understand of quality today, right? And this is important, that features are promised, quality is delivered. We can promise what we want, we can promise anything, but ultimately quality is what is delivered. And many of us need to rethink this concept that whichever organization we are in, whether it's manufacturing, service, IT, anything, it is ultimately the delivery. There is no fun in talking about lots of principles, tools, techniques, and concepts if our delivery is not what people want. It's often said that the best salesman is a good delivery. So your product is so good that it becomes a salesman for your next delivery, and that still holds true. So that hasn't changed. This hasn't changed in the last 50 years, and I still think it still applies. I've seen multiple examples. Of course, you can market it better, everything, but it still applies. And Duran is still right. The plan, control, improve trilogy that our planning, control, and improvement trilogy that Duran gave us is still very much applicable. I think it is even more applicable than any other tool, including PDCA and Six Sigma and any other thing. This can be applied to anything, including the quality profession itself. You plan your quality profession, you set standards, you work to those standards, and try and control things. Once the things are stabilized, you then further improve your own functioning itself, and it can be applied to anything, right, including to very difficult subjects like software development or any other. My view is that quality is often called a support function, right, and it is not. And some of us who are in leadership positions in our organizations can change this, and I believe partly we are also to be blamed, because it's easy to be called a support function. We can be hidden away from the limelight and not really in the thick of things. When I say thick of things, how many of us are called to make a sale? If we are not invited to a sales pitch, I can tell you that already the organization is thinking that we are in the second layer of importance for the organization. Right? This is my barometer for importance, is that did we get invited to a sales pitch in the last few months? Right? if we were not invited to make or we were not thought of important enough to be in a sales pitch, it is signal number one that we are no longer important for the CEO, and either the CEO changes or you change, and you change is not in your control, so it is generally us. Which is the second point. Next point, make a difference to deals for delivery to be counted, and I mean all kinds of company. Of course, the terms may seem a little bit from my background, but this applies to manufacturing, service, professional services, hospitality, anything. The next way is more important, and this has been said often, that count the money. And count the money is a very financial look at, and Duran said this very well many years ago, of by being bilingual, that you speak the language of money upwards and the language of activities or tasks downward, and it still makes a lot of sense. We have we stopped talking the language of money to leadership. There is a lot of romance in and the fascination of the classical way of doing something, the right way of doing something, and in that process we lose the audience, that is the leadership team, which is where most of the problems about the profession start. The next one, this is probably slightly rooted in history, is that we are still seen as the watchdogs, and it is important for somebody to be the watchdog of the organization. So not dropping the ball on compliance is extremely important. There are lots of examples, for example, of a large bank about 10 years ago, which could not detect that there was drug money coming into their system, and the fine on the bank was upwards of $2 billion. There are other banks which dropped on compliance, and fines were upwards of $10 billion, which is larger than the revenue of many organizations across the world. This was the fine itself in 1 year. Right? So those of you who are working in sectors where compliance is an issue, I would strongly recommend that we don't drop the ball on compliance, particularly trying to chase incremental improvements. Improvement sometimes is fashionable in compliance-related industries, but the core job is still regulation or compliance. So that I didn't want to ignore that industry as well, and of course, financial sector is one of the main industry, food and drug control sectors. In many other sectors where quality equal to compliance is not a bad word, right? In other sectors, maybe quality is equal to compliance is probably a limited view, but in many sectors, quality equals compliance is an extremely real estate sector also comes to mind. For example, you don't want mad rush for improvement in real estate sector and dropping the ball on compliance. 10x and 100x is an important topic that I often speak about. I thought I'll put this for your benefit. 10x is, of course, whatever the investment company is making in us, can we deliver 10 times of that, and maybe 100 times of that. There are today examples of concepts or changes that can deliver up to 100 times as well. Okay? But if we are not aiming even 10 times, then I think we are just playing a very substandard game, and we've already lost it before starting the game, right? So if we hang in at 1x, 2x, 3x, nobody's interested. So this is, I can't call it, as I said, a prescription, but I've tried to put together, okay, what are the few things that we can do? And these are all from my recent experience in the last 5-10 years, where I'm trying to bring together various concepts as a new body of knowledge for quality as such. And we can call it anything, business excellence, delivery excellence, or anything else, but ultimately it is the subject of quality. So the first part is, our integration with project management is extremely important. Again, Duran taught this to us, along with, of course, Deming and other leaders, that everything can be done in a project-based manner, in a step-by-step manner. But somewhere down the line, we forgot. I have, in the last 10 years, tried to integrate the quality management profession with the project management. Most of my team members are mandated to do their PMI, PMP certifications. I myself did one. More because it is extremely important to see the end of what we are starting. Many of us become very academic towards the process, and we want to do a good job. Doing a good job and not completing it is for nobody's benefit. Right? So completing it sometimes is more important than doing a good job, because that best job that you do may just not be required at the end of the project. There is a term runner, repeater, stranger that you see on the screen, and this is again something that I've been driving for about 4 or 5 years. Is a lean concept of that large majority of what you do can be auto handled, right? So that you can use technology to handle those that kind of work, and maybe this could be about 90% of your work. This in some industries could be less, some could be more. Of the remaining 10%, 90% can be repeaters where some intervention is required, and strangers where significant intervention is required. Right, all companies are at the end of the day project companies, and that's an important lesson to understand. That everything that we do, not the quality profession, everything that the company is doing is actually a project or a set of projects. And a good analogy for this is if you go to a fast food restaurant, depending on which country you are in, your favorite could change, but you will probably find that 90% of the time the order people are placing is more or less same. It is a burger or something similar depending on the country you are in, and some fries and Coke or Pepsi or your choice of poison. So these 3 components form most of the orders, maybe upwards of 80 to 90%. The person taking the order doesn't even remember or doesn't even have to check the code for these orders because he remembers. The people producing the order don't even remember, don't even consciously think about producing it. It is just their muscle memory that produces it. And sometimes within 1 minute of ordering, you get your order. This is what I call runners, because the process is extremely streamlined. You don't need to tinker with this process. Please don't mess with this process. It is fine, right? It is running okay. Any incremental gain of even 5–10% in this process is not going to change a lot of stuff. The repeaters are which come every 2–3 hours. If I stick to the example of the fast food chain, the repeaters are something that come every 2–3 hours, and we are at some liberty to, maybe the person taking the order doesn't remember the code. The person preparing the order can work on some runners before working on the repeater. And in every industry you will find there are some project engagements or work that you do can be done at a slightly more relaxed way. The process is slightly more fluid, and so on. The stranger is where most of the trouble happens. Some years ago, a large, very leading automobile company in the UK did this experience, and they found that the same service center, one set of customers were extremely happy with the service provided, and the other set of customers were not happy. And this other set were of people who were in the luxury automobile segment. This is when the company realized that they are servicing all the vehicles in the same service center, whether it is the the budget vehicles or the luxury vehicles. The person buying the luxury vehicle does not expect to be serviced like a budget. It may sound snobbish, obnoxious, whatever, but the person buying a luxury vehicle does not want to be serviced with the same standards as a budget vehicle. Right? The company was able to fix this and found that obviously the number of luxury vehicles are much lesser, so they are falling in the stranger category. And they gave the many basic quality and productivity principles were given up. They stopped looking at time. They stopped looking at productivity of these mechanics, because it was cheaper to have a mechanic sit all day waiting for a stranger vehicle, stranger as in the luxury vehicle, and service it within half an hour, than to see the productivity of that mechanic and allow the luxury vehicle to wait for 2 hours. Think of it this way, right? What is cheaper? What is more effective? So it goes against, this example goes against the conventional quality and productivity thinking. It is not important to measure productivity of a mechanic who is working on a luxury vehicle, because the price of somebody, that customer waiting, is significantly higher than the benefit you get by penny pinching on some of this time. Now, in an earlier slide, I said that reverence is good, but we need to sometimes reevaluate. I believe the new Pareto is 1 and 90 or 1 and 99 even, right? Or 1090 or 199 or something like that. If you evaluate any service process, you will find that it is that last 1% that makes the long tail. I have done this for several, and I confess that it is mostly for service organizations, but I suspect it might also be true for manufacturing. With increasing standardization, with increasing automation, the Pareto is pushed now from 20-80 or 80-20 to 199. And you try and apply this to your organization, you will find that it is probably true that 1% ruins everything, and which I call the long tail. And the long tail can be really, really long. Any of you who applied for a home loan and got into some angle will know this. But you should also know that 99% of the home loans or more actually went on smoothly. We were just unlucky that we were in that 1%. And the converse of this is that for you and me who got unlucky in that 1%, it is 100% poor performance. The customer is not measuring us on percentage. That is where one of the difficulties with Six Sigma is, that last few customers who missed out are actually, for them, the company's performance is 100% poor, because they gave you one chance and we didn't measure up. The other prescription on checking quality is, please embrace technology. If you haven't, this is already here. It has already eaten your jobs, including mine. And if we remain like the ostrich with the head in the sand, it's only a matter of time for the inevitable to happen. Automation, elimination through technology is where most of the jobs in quality are going. And I know many of you today are interested in what is the next job in quality that you want to take. The next job is likely to come at the cusp of automation and elimination. And I've already seen many professionals make the move from traditional reengineering, traditional quality jobs to automation jobs, or at least having a very good knowledge of automation. I can tell you I have led some large RP implementations in the last few years. Most of the successful projects that I was part of, or my teams were part of, were people who were previously in quality but were now leading reengineering or automation teams, because they understood how the process works. They understood the value of the Six Sigma concept of SIPOC or POPIS or the other things, or they understood that there is a lot of logic, there is a lot of need to understand the process in great detail before getting into automation. Right? Some of the people who are born in the automation era don't know this. So we have an advantage, right? We are just not playing that advantage. We have a huge advantage. I can assure you, all the projects that have been successful under my watch in the last 5 years in automation space are all led by people who were earlier in quality or engineering profession. So you have an advantage which should be played. I'm just trying to keep an eye on the time. Yes, we have more 5-6 minutes to go. The other area which I talk about, a lot of us are involved in operations, and my main theme there is that make operations boring. Totally make operation boring, and boring as in everything should happen to a cadence, everything should happen to like a schedule, no surprises, everybody knows everything, something goes wrong, we know what to do, so that our minds are free to do some real problem solving, real critical thinking. Getting overly involved in making operations exciting is the dumbest idea that I have seen in the last 50 years in operations. Operations is all about rhythm and making it boring, and less about. It is similar to the financial services industry. Many people want to know why financial services or large banks are not very creative and innovative. It needs a lot of operations rhythm and lot of operations discipline to keep all the ATMs running. 6-7 years ago, maybe even lesser, large bank in the UK went very cute and sweet and changed something around in their ATMs, didn't do the proper testing. ATMs were down for minimum 3 days to 3 weeks depending on the region. Imagine ATMs being down. So these companies don't want too much innovation in what they are doing, and by that I don't mean that they don't want improvement. All they want is that they want the innovation wrapper and not the core system. This is a complicated topic, but it goes back to this point that if you make operations boring, the per transaction cost of operations comes down significantly, and it is still relevant. It is still relevant. Of course, it links to the earlier topic of automation. You use automation, you use making operations boring, bring down the cost of per transaction. That's usually the game. The other, which is slightly counterintuitive to my earlier point about automation, is concepts like Gemba and Obeya and low or no tech. So there are still a lot of projects using Lean or similar principles that can be done using solving idle time and stuff. Some years ago, I was on a project for travel card customer complaint process, or rather customer complaints were increasing in our travel cards, and when we looked at the travel card process, we felt that this should be simple. They designed the millions of dollars spent into the design and the IT infrastructure. This should have happened in 1 hour, right? So you buy the card and it gets activated in 1 hour, but it was taking about 24 hours to get activated. Obviously, where do people buy the travel card? They buy it at an airport or just before leaving for an international visit. And if it is not active when you land, it doesn't serve any purpose, because you needed it when you landed and it doesn't work, right? So we re-looked at the whole process, and of course there was a proposal from a consulting team to redo the whole platform and millions of dollars again and stuff, and it will take 6 to 9 months, maybe 10 months or more to deploy it. What we did is that we did a Gemba. We sat with the team and figured out that there are 4 basic processes that are being done. You are entering, you're taking the data capture, you're entering it into system. This person who enters cannot load the card and so on, and somebody has to finally check and say, okay, the card is done. So there are 4 steps. Each one does not take more than 3 to 4 minutes. If you total of 4 minutes to 4, 16 minutes should be the cycle time, right? And we were doing it in 24 hours. The only solution was that, okay, why were we doing it? Because the first process is being performed, then the backlog is there, then the backlog is taken to the second process, and so on. It does not need too much intelligence to say that why do we need the backlog. Just move in a flow, which is the lean thinking principle of flow or cell thinking or something like that. So still low tech thinking is important. Gemba is Obeya is important. Obeya is a Japanese term for you can say control room or war room. I've used this concept for 10 years now, where I ban PPTs, PowerPoint presentations, and emails on projects. It is just done on A3 side, A2 size sheet, and we just use post-its to convey what is to be done. That's it. And this term, of course, comes from a war room or a control room concept. Everybody, there's no chair in the room, nothing. I have used it for years. So some of you who are interested maybe can contact me later to for a discussion on what this is and how it can be used. I've spoken about sales and getting involved with sales, but what is more important also is that our collaboration with finance, HR, and technology. And I believe we've lived too long in the cocoon of quality and operations. We need to branch out to finance, HR, and technology, because large change does not happen without finance, HR, and technology. If you want to change something in a company and you think you can do it yourself, you're smoking something, right? It does not happen without involvement of finance, HR, and technology, and maybe some other functions as well. And we are usually not very good friends with these functions. We don't like them, they don't like us, and that's the end of story. So strong suggestion: if you are not already friends with finance, HR, and technology, please make good friends with them. They are your key to solving large problems, large impactful problems of the company. Small ones you can do yourself. And lastly, before I conclude, we can still, as a community, as a quality professional group, I still think that we can make an impact. 10x and 100x is very much possible. We have weathered some storms in the last 25-30 years as a profession. We can weather this one as well. But we have to keep our eyes open and arms open for embracing some new principles like automation, technology, some old school stuff as well, rethinking some of our deeply established principles, not throwing them out, just rethinking, and setting our sights high on 10x or 100x and not hiding under a budget line, which unfortunately many times we do. So this is where I'll conclude my talk. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm sure some questions are there, as I saw some popping up. But before I conclude, let me quickly share these coordinates. How you can get in touch with me will be shared. You can of course write to me. The presentation is usually I'll put it up on my website, which is mentioned at the bottom of the slide, managebetter.in. But you can write to me as well, and I'll be happy to share the presentation. A